Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me here in Copenhagen today for the Copenhagen Fashion Week. My name is Kristoffer, Dahy Ernst. I'm the editor-in-chief at the Danish men's magazine, and today with me I have a wonderful panel of incredibly exciting guests that I'm really excited to talk to today. We're going to discuss menswear, and in particular we're going to discuss changes in the menswear landscape. The title of the discussion is called A Discussion of the Evolution of Nordic Menswear, Its Visual Aesthetic and Global Impression. What a nice title and what a nice introduction we're going to have today. Just to kick it off, I would like each participant to introduce themselves. And Julius, take it away.
I'll start. My name is Julius Juul. I am the co-founder and creative director at the fashion brand HELIOT EMIL.
Perfect, thank you. And over to you, Thibaud.
Hi everyone, my name is Thibaud Guyonnet. I'm the creative director and the head of buying at Juul store Berlin. We're an independent concept store located in Kreuzberg in Berlin.
Thank you. And the next shining light is you, Ida.
Thank you so much. So I'm Ida. I'm the buying director for Browns in London, and we do everything from men's to women's to kids.
Thank you so much. And Simon?
Yeah, my name is Simon Wick, and I'm the co-founder of the brand division that I have with my older sister Nana, and we do unisex wear.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have you, Baptiste, straight from
Paris. I'm Baptiste Piegay. I'm the editor-in-chief of L'Officiel Homme.
Thank you so much. Ida, I would like to start off with you, and also from a buying perspective, you represent one of the most interesting and major retail institutions in the world. How, from your perspective, has Nordic menswear changed over the last 3 to 5 years?
I think it's a really good question because I mean, I grew up in Sweden, so I grew up and everything was very preppy and very sort of pulled together and very minimalistic. And I think for a long time, even looking outside when I started in fashion, that's why, you know, Acne came along and it was still perceived to be maybe less preppy, but very much sort of like minimalistic, pared back, definitely cool, but there was like a sort of tonal palette of like black, gray and nude that was seen everywhere. And I think now what is exciting coming here to Copenhagen, and I think particularly with the introduction of men's on the schedule last year, I was super excited because before that, thank you to Julius and his brother, they were the only people that I got to see that were showing on schedule before that. And I think what you're seeing now is this amazing vibrance where there's, you know, not just one way of doing menswear, but there are so many different ways. So from obviously what you guys do, which is super cool and dark, to Simon, you know, like what you guys are doing, which is equally cool, but much more colorful, you know, lots of cutout, quite sexy. You also sometimes do sexy, but you know, you then have like, you know, the pared back, you have sustainability as well as like an overarching theme, which is amazing. So I think, you know, coming here is incredible because there is not just one thing to pick up, and I think you would probably agree with me on that.
100%. I mean, I was telling you before in the car, Copenhagen Fashion Week used to be our most important fashion week. For Juul store, we had a lot of Scandinavian brands a few years ago. And what is quite crazy for me is that it managed to stay relevant even after everything that happened now, because I just came back from Paris now and I realized that Paris took over so much because of COVID, obviously took over a lot from New York, because of Brexit, took a lot over from London. Milan is a bit always like up and down, and Paris became this like mega, I don't know, center for fashion. And it's really cool for me to see that Copenhagen managed to stay relevant and actually becoming more and more relevant every season.
And why do you think that is? Why is it possible, or what is the activities that are keeping Copenhagen at the forefront?
I mean, I think you guys are very proud of your designers also. That's something that we don't really have in Berlin, for example. That's something we often complain about, like this sense of community and like supporting each other. I see how like even I think somehow the government is also involved in it. Like, for example, Germany does not support much young designers. Although it's about concepts and fashion, it's also about money, and a young designer is not able to have a collection or even a location or a showroom if there is no financial support. So I think that part is a big part, and then you guys help out each other so much. That's really something that I see. There is, it might be a bit of the Scandinavian way of doing things, I don't know, but yeah, there's so much support. If it's governmental support or even like designers with other designers, or the press, or and I think it's that's where you see that being nice is actually helping each other, helping out everyone, and competition sometimes is a bit stupid. It doesn't lead anywhere.
That's a super nice point that you make here, Thibaud. And I would like to ask you, Simon, I know that you have also talked about being part of this community, not only in Copenhagen, but also globally, that you have a sort of a sense of understanding of values and shared values. How do you see the Nordic or even the Copenhagen or the Danish community bringing you forward?
I think, as we said, that what we have here is not a very competitive scene. It's more like the understanding that when you grow, when one of us grows, we all grow. So this sense of community that we have here is, the way that we have used it is, whenever I have had any problems, any questions, I would call up Julius, for example, or I would ask another brand, or I'd call Nikolai from Guyonnet, or it's something where it's like we have this understanding that if any of us do good, all of us do that. And this understanding of it, I think that's probably something that's changed within the generations, where my generation, being an Instagram brand, I came from Instagram, so I basically built my community around the brand and let the community build the brand around with this. It really allowed us to figure out how can we use this to our advantage, both for the customer, for the retailer, for every aspect of the brand. So we use it in that way when we like to be in dialogue with our customer on Instagram, like taking advice of what would they like within a product, like what direction should we go with it, and try to really build our own aesthetic around that community and see where it can take us. And so far it's been something that's been very helpful for us. Yeah.
And Julius, how do you see community, and how do you see yourself as a part of a scene, or do you see yourself a part of, or more like a part of a global understanding of menswear?
I would say that our brand is definitely globally based, because as you mentioned, the community is a big central part in what we do, and being able to take feedback from people around the world, but that are so linked to your community is amazing, and is really something that can build a brand way more than just being able to take feedback from your local audience. So I think like what Simon mentioned before, that creating a community that identifies with what you're building, whether that's locally or globally, is I think the future of creating brands today.
Thank you. Baptiste, I would like to ask you, there has been a lot of shift in menswear over the last years.
Sure.
And from your perspective, from the editorial side, what has been sort of some of the most interesting shifts we've seen?
I think the more recent would be about gender fluidity. That's something that also that even the fragrance world is embracing right now. There are more and more fragrances designed for both men and women. And I think this idea of fluidity is, well, very Scandinavian in a way, because for a long while, what this concept notion of Scandinavian fashion being very rigid and very, as Ada pointed out, very monochromic. And it's so rich and so diverse. I think someone showed the way for another way to approach fashion. And obviously the other main thing that I think Nordic fashion was really about, being the first to take sustainability into account. And that was really groundbreaking. And now, obviously, we've seen like the main luxury brands are all forsaking furs and leather. Most of them is going to be the way forward from now on. And I think Scandi Fashion was the first brands to truly, set a new agenda in that regard.
Ida, from your position at Browns, do you see yourself as the factors that is driving the sort of the evolution of menswear, or do you take that from the outside and look what happens in the world? I mean, do you see yourself as the main driver, or is it something that you have to adapt to constantly?
I mean,
Be honest with us.
No, I think it's a bit. I'm really lucky. I have an incredible team, and they are, you know, if it was just me by myself, then I would be absolutely screwed. But, you know, between those guys, we're talking about the menswear crew, obviously you guys know them, they are some super cool individuals, and they got a really good eye. I think anyone who wants to be a good buyer has to have an ability to read not just what's happening around you, but also be able to see what's going to happen in the future. So I think it's a good kind of combination. Sometimes you're sort of led by things that are very now and here and happening, but mainly with buying, you have to be able to think ahead and see ahead. I mean, sometimes that's analytically, but also I think visually. So, you know, I think that combination is the difference between, you know, these guys are like so far ahead, and for us it's like coming in, because today, I guess, you know, and Baptiste, maybe like for all of us, it's like when we started out, like we were talking about this, it was different because it wasn't so visual immediately. So generally we would see things like 8-9 months before anyone else saw them, because even the magazines wouldn't publish them until like, you know, at certain times of the year. And then now today it's, you know, everyone can see it immediately. So you have that instant reaction. So you kind of, you don't have that time to sort of think about it. Sometimes that helps because you get the time to like read the audience as well. And I think there's definitely moments like that in when you're sitting somewhere, or I had a few of those here in Copenhagen as well. I mean, your show last time, and I think one of the first times that I saw when I came to Copenhagen, I think it was like maybe 5 years ago or so, and you were showing it was like in a garage, and I was like, okay, that's where I felt like when menswear was changing for Scandinavian fashion, in my opinion, to be honest. So these things, you know, I think are really important as well, like being able to just adjust and understand what's happening around you.
And Julius, could you, Ida touched upon it a little bit, could you give us an idea about how do you actually work with interpreting the future and distilling it down to what is now, what is happening now?
I think Ida put us up on a pedestal. Maybe a bit. Like, we're not
yourself
we're
down
not
there.
that great. I mean, she represents like some of the greatest brands in the world. I think, I mean, but we're trying our best. I think in my perspective, there's like a couple of thematics that are present in menswear right now. Whereas Baptiste mentioned the gender fluidity is a big part of it. There's sustainability, which is also a big part of it. And then I think personally that the innovation part is also a big theme that's happening right now. So people that are able to sort of think outside the box, make, you know, like things that haven't been seen in the industry before. And I think that we generally try to cohort that into our way of thinking in everything that we do. So both in terms of the clothes that we make, but also in terms of the shows and everything. And I think that that's what's able to, you know, like give you a head start. I think, I mean, we've always tried to be ahead of this, you know, like the curve in terms of like the shows that we created. I don't want to toot my own horn, but we did a digital show before it was even a thing. We did a show where you could change the different angles from 7 different angles, and that was like late 2018, before people had even tried thinking about this. And then the pandemic happened, and then all of a sudden we have LVMH calling us about digital shows, and we were like, we don't know anything about it.
We just
but
did it. Yeah.
We just did it, you know, and that's sort of like the things that can make you, you know, like jump a bit in this you know, very condensed scene, is when you're able to think innovatively and take different approaches that haven't been taken before. So I think that that's a big part of what we do. Yeah, in the way that we think.
And Can I add something?
Yeah, of course.
I was just to come back to this idea of community. I think this is what people found so endearing about Nordic fashion, because I think possibly it happened because we're slightly on the outskirts of the big fashion hubs, right? London, Milan, Paris, whatever, or New York. So you had to make your own thing happen organically. And this is why by creating your own rules, in the end, eventually you set up a new set of rules for everybody to follow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's nice. Simon, how do you see division responding to gender fluidity? I know that you don't put too much attention to it, or actually you do.
Yeah, actually, so as you're saying, that's something we're not trying to put a label on or like really state, because like for us, you know, we try to create androgynous like clothing and everything we do. That meaning like when we fit something, we do it on both a male and a female.
Mm.
Of course, there are some styles that are like more like leaning towards a gender, but it's not something that we put too much into. And the response that we get is like this weird mix of customers. Like we have this broadest, widest community. Like we have, we could have, an it crowd in LA being like very beachy, wearing our stuff, and we could, have gangster rappers from New York wearing the same. Here in Copenhagen, you could have like these posh girls wearing it, and the guys, skating, wearing the same clothes. And I think that's the response we get to, not really trying to put a label on what we do. Just like we're trying to state that it's for everyone. And we work in a way where, working with dead stock fabrics, for example, allowing us to create, exclusive collections for the retailers that we work with, creating a lot of colorways, like so you wouldn't have the same product in 2 stores, allowing, the customers to, find what suits them best. It being the color or, the fabric or what else. And the response that we get from the retailers is that we could have, these stores that buy super feminine. And then we could have, these menswear stores like buying all of our shirting. And it's such a fun mix because, the response that we get is that it sells super well in both places. It's just like 2 completely different customers. And us not trying to put a label on what it is, I think that's it helps us a lot. And like that's really like the future of, how we should see fashion in terms of gender.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Thibaud, I would like to ask you, you are here as a buyer in Copenhagen. We're just coming out of COVID, hopefully, beginning of 2022. What are you looking for? What are you hoping to find when you come to Copenhagen on a week like this?
So, I mean, we were talking also about it in the car earlier. We had a little pre-chat. It's just really good to be back, obviously, in a physical environment, like where we can actually touch the products. I've been very, very cautious with the buying the past 2 years because when the first COVID wave hit, I literally had to be on the phone with every single brand being like, we have to cancel everything. I have a trauma from this. So I've been very like, before taking in new brands, I didn't take any brands virtually. So I've been waiting and keeping my budgets for now. So I'm excited to just like meet the people in person, chat, understand. Again, I'm talking about community. Like I would actually never buy a brand if I don't know who is behind and who is the crowd around the brand. That's really something. Every time I see a young brand, the collection can be amazing, but if I don't really get who the person behind is, or like who are your friends, who's going to be the kind of guy or girl that is going to buy it in the shop, it's really hard for me to project on the brand. So being here, going to the shows, going to dinners where I might meet designers, that's exactly what I'm looking for when I come to a fashion week. And it's different from Paris, where we are all running everywhere. Copenhagen is much chiller and you have time to chit chat and people are open to talk about stuff. This is something that we might not do in Paris, for example. So
I agree with Thibaud. I think one thing that this health crisis taught us is that now fashion has to have a meaning as well. It has to be meaningful and not just something you buy for the sake of buying.
Because there are so many great brands out there, to be honest. Like I received, I don't know, 200 emails a day of brands. So you got to pick at some point, and you're like, okay, it has to have some
emotional connection.
Emotional connection. That's the thing. And by not meeting people, by just doing Zoom calls where you can't hear, you can't see, it was a nightmare, to be honest. So also for us, we're quite a small store. The curation is really like I pick every single item myself. So it's from the books to like, of course I have a team helping, but it was so hard to do something like. It was too dry to do it online.
Maybe it's a question also for designers here, sorry, but I was curious to know how did you deal with this from a designing point of view?
This is a virtual COVID situation. So we're like quite a new brand. So actually I have never tried not being like virtual. So we did a season where we had a showroom, but that was 2 years ago, and it wasn't like we wasn't really getting started for real, and then I didn't have contact to all the buyers, so I didn't manage get this real response. So I could really feel like everyone I have met that's seen the clothes in person, that's like been a whole nother like different conversation. Ida, for example, took her time to like come down and see us like when we're just getting started and really get to know us there, and it obviously like had another impression on you, I feel. So it's been super weird, especially like as a new brand, starting out, like 'cause you could just like send them pictures, and we work with these amazing fabrics, and it's just like flat on a screen. So it's like it's been hard, I think. So I'm super like excited to see what happens on the other side.
And Julius, also leaning into this, you have also had some great experiences with being all digital. Do you see that there's still something to bring into the future as well that you have learned over the last 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big believer in digital connection as well. I think that, you know, like as much as I believe in, you know, like meeting people physically and obviously connecting on another level, I believe that, you know, like with the power of Instagram, you can create you know, communities, and you can create connections between people that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for that medium. I think that, you know, like a lot of the things that we've done have been through just reaching out to people on Instagram, or them reaching out to us and saying like, I think that what you're doing is super cool. And then we see, oh, they're doing this 3D scanning of, you know, like all of these things. And we're like, oh, that's super cool. Let's, you know, like connect the dots. And that, in my opinion, wouldn't have happened if I just like met a person in Paris and I had to sort of like, you know, like go out of my, you know, way to meet with that person and figure out all of these things. I think that the capabilities are now with people being able to connect on such a fast pace, endless in a lot of ways. But I do agree with Thibaud as well that, you know, like once you're past that barrier of like the first introduction, then you sort of need that physical connection to also seal the deal and to also make that, you know, connection sort of more real, make it more viable in the long term. Yeah.
Ida, I would like to ask you, what do you project, or what do you expect your customers to ask more for in the future? What are they looking for when they come to you?
I think, I mean, one of the things that we saw, which I was really happy about, because I think when COVID happened, I thought, especially in menswear, the sustainability curve was definitely behind womenswear. And it just started like that season 2020, which, you know, men's team got to complete the entire season and women's kind of got a bit scuppered in the middle of it. And I was worried that that whole debate, that the conversation around sustainability and doing things better and progressing was going to kind of die down as people were trying to rescue themselves. But actually, I think what we found in that time, not just from a brand perspective, but also from the consumer, that they were actually getting more engaged in that. And we saw that traction continuing to build and build and build. So that I hope, and I think for us, it's absolutely crucial for new brands that we pick up, that they have sustainability credentials, or at least that they're working towards them, because as a company, it's also our responsibility. So this is something where we need to be really clear about what we want to do. I think on top of that, I mean, you talked about gender fluidity. I think this is something that we're seeing. So for me, it's also about sizing and body inclusivity, which I think it's been a debate again a lot in women's wear, but in menswear you don't see it so much, and that actually makes me really sad, because men like women come in all different shapes and sizes, and I think, you know, being able to come into a store the same way as women talk about it, and I think, you know, women's not there either, but it's definitely, there is a position there of like, what is the size curve? How do we do that? How do we make it easier to shop, like we did when we opened our East London store nearly 4 years ago now. We decided to mix all men's and women's together so that people would just come and pick up an item because they liked it. Because I think one of the things that we saw was that women's were super happy with the whole streetwear trend to like go and buy from the men's department. But there was like in our South Molton Street store, which was our old flagship store, there was like almost like an invisible barrier where men would only come if they were like, you know, with their girlfriend, and they would never kind of cross over. But you know, with the likes of Alessandro and everyone else, and, you know, you guys are doing some really great things as well, but sort of just blending together, we just wanted to like get the men in there. And sometimes we would buy a brand and it didn't make sense to buy it for both men's and women's, but it was for both. So it was like, how can we play together there? So I think those three subjects to me are the key for the future of fashion.
Simon, what do you hope Nordic menswear, both now and also in the near future, would come to signify? What would you like the the sort of the overarching story about Nordic menswear to be?
Yeah, I think it's a tough question.
Yeah.
This story, I
It's
think,
in your hands now.
All on you.
No, I
You
think
decide.
I hope that it gets like more inclusive.
Mm.
I hope that we can break this barrier of, as Ida's saying, like menswear should be something masculine, because it doesn't necessarily have to be like that. I hope that this, when you look at Nordic menswear, we are a little bit more daring than we've been before. And I think when I think of like menswear, if I go back, it's like this very monochrome, very like uniformish look. Everyone's wearing the same, and that's the the vision I have of how men are dressing, and well, not everyone, but many men are dressing like that. And I hope that we can tell a story where it gets like more unique. So you get to tell your own story and not being like put in this Scandi box. And instead, you can tell your own story and what you're wearing.
And I wonder if Nordic fashion is not part of a bigger storytelling as well. I think maybe it's a very far-fetched theory, so I'm going to test it with the locals. I think it has something to do with food as well, because Scandinavian chefs were the first to try to reconnect with local sourcing.
The region,
with the region, not importing anything, because simply it's too expensive as well. And to make from this context something new and fresh and exciting, now everybody is doing it. No chef in the world would cook tomatoes in winter in France now.
Correct.
Thanks to Nordic fashion.
Yeah.
To Nordic chefs. Sorry.
Yeah. So except from the food, Baptiste, what do you hope to bring home with you from this trip?
Hopefully good memories, not COVID. Maybe a new template for the future. Because I think it's what everybody, whether it's from a editorial point of view, a buyer's point of view, a designer point of view, is hopefully it's like wishful thinking, but trying to set up a new agenda for the future, and not just nice thoughts about COVID really changed everything, and go back to normal like things were 10 years ago. I think that'd be really sad and really, dispiriting.
Yeah. Baptiste, Simon, Ida, Thibaud, Julius, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you very much, man.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for tuning in and looking at us, having a great talk here today. Stay tuned and follow the channel for more updates. Hello everyone.